Hi, we are Group 4, and today we'll be discussing the Cape Wind controversy. And more specifically, we'll be talking about the air quality and the issues related to it. So, as you know, air quality is measured using an air quality index. An air quality index is a number used by government agencies to communicate to the public on how polluted the air is currently, or how polluted it is forecast to become. And most air quality indexes are formulated to provide the general population an idea of the level of pollution in the air in certain environments. And this is so that the public can easily understand the quality of air, and as a result, they are able to protect their health by taking precautionary measures during periods of poor air quality. So, because different environments have different considerations with regards to pollution, the formulation of air quality indexes are inconsistent, and there are many different indexes in different places. For example, Singapore uses the Pollutants Standard Index, which is a PSI, to measure air quality, whereby in the UK they use the Daily Air Quality Index, and in the US, just the Air Quality Index. So these indexes measure different kinds of pollutants, but the 5 main pollutants which are measured are carbon monoxide, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter. And other measures, other different pollutants which are also measured are hydrogen sulfide as well, as the differentiation of different particulate matter having a certain diameter. So our case is centered about Nantucket Sound, which is an area in Massachusetts. And this is in the US, so the air quality index will be used for measuring the air quality in the area. And the main pollutants in Nantucket Sound are carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. And the AQI which is being used is ranged between 0 and 500, 0 being the most safe and 500 being the most hazardous. In Nantucket Sound, the National Environmental Agency in the US has measured the air quality to be in a good to moderate range, which is between 0 to 100. This means that health issues and concerns due to pollution are at a minimum. Let's talk a little bit about how to improve air quality. As we know, air quality can cause serious harm to human health. And this could be in the short term, which is manifested in coughing, or it could become chronic diseases such as heart and lung disease, and can even cause cancer. So health problems will increase when pollution increases. Therefore, maintaining a good air quality is essential in providing the community good health benefits. So the main way to increase the air quality in an area is to reduce the emissions, and specifically in the Nantucket Sound, this would be in the decrease in carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide emissions. Other pollutants which can cause serious health effects are such as ozone, and this is also an issue in Nantucket Sound, especially since transportation is the main source of pollution. So we will address the different issues on air quality today, as we have 4 different special guests. So on my right, we have the proponents to the case, which are environmentalists, and on my left, we have a fisherman, and we have an eco-tourist today. And
we have environmentalists too as well.
Yes. So Si En is on the opposition side, as well as Nicholas, whereby Jie Ying and Wee Kiat will be on the proposition side. And Tan Lee will summarize and present our group view with regards to this whole issue. So proposition, when you're ready, you can present your first point.
Cape Wind will contribute to improve air quality by reducing air pollution emissions in New England. According to the American Lung Association reports, Cape Cod has the worst air quality and highest asthma rates in Massachusetts. This is due to the massive emissions of pollutants from conventional power plants such as coal, oil, and gas. For instance, a year of operation of a comparable coal power plant could produce as much as 1.5 million tons of carbon dioxide and tens of thousands of tons of other airborne chemicals and pollutants. A year of operation of an offshore wind farm produced no such pollution. Furthermore, it is reported that Cape Wind will reduce global warming greenhouse gas emissions by 734,000 tons per year. Global warming contributes to rising sea levels and more frequent storms which erode our beaches. Wind farms like Cape Wind are clean because they produce electricity from wind and do not produce any air pollution. Their operations also reduce the amount of fossil fuel power that needs to be generated, thereby reducing the amount of pollution that goes into the air. The Cape Wind project can create 420 megawatts of clean wind energy, which is sufficient to power about 125,000 homes and approximately 3/4 of Cape Coast's electricity needs. At present, the electricity is supplied by polluting power plants such as natural gas, coal, oil, and nuclear fuel. Switching the Cape's current energy mix to wind will cut more than 130,000 cars worth of air and global warming pollution. Thank you.
Thank you, proposition. So we'll give a short period of time for the opposition to consider these points and provide a rebuttal. Keep in mind that you are to present your views with regards to whether you have evidence or whether it is your own opinion. So please state this in your analysis. So anytime you're ready.
Okay. Thank you, proposition. So first and foremost, I do agree with you about the amount of carbon emission which will be reduced if a wind turbine is used to generate electricity instead of a coal-based plant. However, you said so much about carbon dioxide being greenhouse gas and causes global warming stuff like that. So do you know that actually during the construction phase of the wind turbine itself, it actually leads to more pollution? And one example which is used during the construction phase would be the draining at the sites. So if you were to look at the construction phase period itself, most of the air pollutants such as carbon dioxide is being released into the environment, which would harm our very own people's health. So since we are harming our own people, why would we want to build a wind turbine? Would you want to see a wind turbine when you look out of the window? No, right? So why build that? Also, from my current research, I found that most of the sources of air pollution in our own country is actually comes from the transportation sector as well as the industrial sector. So since most of our emissions don't come from generation of electricity, why would we want to build a wind turbine? Don't we have a lot of things to do? Why would we want to build such things? I've also realized that there's this company called TransCanada. They own a 130 megawatt 44 turbine, and they recently announced that it has structured an agreement with a New England utility to supply renewable energy to an optional green electricity choice program at a flat rate which is lesser than half of Cape Wind's price. So isn't this a better choice as compared to your project? Also, I would like you to keep in mind that it's not about whether the wind turbine can improve the overall quality of air, but whether it's the best alternative in improving the quality of air in our country. We do have alternative source of energy instead of tapping on wind energy to supply the demanded power. One of the alternatives which we can use is to use solar photovoltaics. And solar photovoltaics may be a better option as compared to your wind energy because of the lesser amount of emission of air pollutants into the air during the construction phase itself. Also, they are very convenient and do not need a large area as compared to your offshore wind turbine. Also, if we are looking at offshore renewable energy, one other alternative which I can provide you is to tap on the tidal energy. So tidal energy are actually more predictable than wind energy and hence their capacity factor is higher. So with the same amount of construction costs, why would tapping tidal energy be a better alternative choice as compared to wind energy, which is an intermittent source?
Okay, thank you, opposition. So proposition, you can take a little while to consider her points. Present your next argument.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your views. Firstly, I do agree that the emission by the construction phase does harm the people. However, it is negligible compared to the amount of emissions reduced by Cape Wind project. Also, looking at photovoltaic energy generation, I think it requires a large area for all the installations. So this point you might have to reconsider. And lastly, looking at offshore tidal generation, which you mentioned, it requires the building of large barrage, and this actually imposes greater visual damage to Nantucket Sound. In addition, it also causes greater obstruction to the fishermen. Right now, to look at two forms of alternative energy sources that does not produce smoke emissions. Firstly is the hydroelectric generation, looking at the building of hydroelectric dams. The building of hydroelectric dams causes the flooding of large area of land, and much of it previously forested. The size of the reservoirs created can be extremely large, and according to recent studies, the decaying vegetation due to the submerged flooding may give off greenhouse gases that is equivalent to those from large electricity generation plants, therefore defeating the purpose of a cleaner air quality by this form of energy source. Furthermore, the bacteria in decaying vegetation can also cause mercury in rocks, a form that is soluble in water, and this soluble mercury can then be accumulated in fishes and can cause serious health hazards when the fishes are consumed. Next, if we were to look at nuclear, it is known that there's great environmental costs associated with nuclear plants, starting from the mining phase. And also looking at the accidents such as the Chernobyl incident as well as the Fukushima accident, it serves as painful reminders of the great risk that is associated with nuclear power generation. The radioactive material released from either the reactor or the on-site spent fuel can kill and injure tens of thousands of people living within 500 miles from the site. In addition, if accidents were to happen, it will render large areas of land inhabitable for a long period of time. So, in considering all these points, I still think that Cape Wind is the best form of high air quality power generation, and it should be given a go. Thank you.
Thank you, proposition. So, opposition, you can take a bit of time to consider these points and make a final rebuttal.
Now, I really serve 3 roles here. I'm a fisherman. I'm also an environmentalist. I have all environmental views. I'm also a proud resident of the Nantucket Sound. The Nantucket Sound for the past 62 years and 3 months. I own a fishery. I've got lots of slaves. I meant employees working for me to get the fish when I'm away here to have this interview. But I know we're talking too much about myself. Really. I need to thank these people. Thank Johnson, Tanley, these 2 Cape Wind officials for masquerading as environmentalists. And of course, Sir here with this wonderful eco tour guide whom I never met before. But okay, that's good as well. All these people are really like educated people, and they've all talked about different technical benefits, non-technical benefits, and I don't know what else they're talking about. Some people carbon dioxide emissions, carbon monoxide emissions, some other oxide emissions, I don't know what. But and I'm just a fisherman, I don't really know much. But sometime back, I did a course at university, and I went on an exchange program to this place in Singapore called the National University of Singapore. Wonderful place, extremely hot weather. And did a course in economics there, and that has kind of taught me a thing or two about how to figure all this stuff out from a fisherman's perspective. Yay! So I've listened to all the speeches given by these educated people, and I do have some issues with them. A few points of contention. Firstly, that on the benefits of reducing emissions because of having wind turbines that are running. Secondly, regarding the cost, the environmental cost, the air quality because of construction of wind turbines, and finally some digression towards an alternative, for instance, photovoltaic cells. So firstly, that on the benefits, as Sir has already mentioned here, we on the side of the opposition definitely agree that there will be some degree, some kind of magnitude to the benefit because of reduction of emissions from conventional generation, but nonetheless has to be an upper limit on the amount of generation, on the amount of emission that you can save, simply because wind turbines are not exactly the most reliable thing out there, or more precisely, wind power isn't exactly the most reliable source of energy out there, simply because wind doesn't blow all the time. Every now and then a hurricane, which you probably wipe out all your wind turbines. But more importantly, you don't really have you don't really have that much wind all the time, and so you need to have a constant, sustainable, a constant source of power that's able to supply electricity to homes whenever there's a demand for it. In that case, you still need to maintain some form of generation, either some kind of an ancillary service frequency regulation, something to just keep the power going in case that there's no wind on a particular day. And therefore, you still need to have some of these generators running, and therefore there is only so much emissions that you can actually cut down. Secondly, that on the construction cost being negligible, actually I'll talk about this more in my substantive, so I need to skip it. Now, thirdly, that on the photovoltaic cells, one of the alternatives, we'll be trying to bring up alternatives here, simply because we feel that there's another way to obtain energy, cheaper energy, good energy, but without having Nantucket Sound to incur the cost of building these generators, the environmental cost of these generators. And here WeCare has talked about photovoltaic cells having a low surface area. He thinks that it actually have a large surface area. Now the reason why we say that photovoltaic cells actually use a low surface area, because if you compare the operation of PV cells versus wind turbines need to have a certain minimum spacing between them because of the wake effect. Simply because when air goes through a wind turbine, if I'm not wrong, based on my fisherman's knowledge, some kind of turbulence will occur behind and it will disrupt the amount of power that you can obtain from the wind turbines behind the wind turbines in front. Simply put, when wind blows, the wind turbines behind will have a reduced efficiency because of the wake effect. So you need to have a certain minimum distance between the turbines and they will occupy a really, really huge space. As opposed to PV cells, you just need to cover a certain expense and there's no real cost to having them close together, based on my layman understanding of this. So having dealt with the 3 points of contention here, actually 2 of them, I will now move on to my substantive. I'll be talking about, firstly, an extension of what Sun had discussed about the construction costs due to emissions, with a concept I learned in my economics course called net present value. And I'll also be talking about the moral authority, basically how Cape Wind officials here are able to decide who lives and who dies. Now, to talk about the cost, to move on my first point, substantive, the cost of emissions. She has already spoken about this cost. A great deal of carbon monoxide emissions will be generated, and everybody's not going to be happy. Everyone's going to suffer. Health quality is going to drop. People are going to cough and all that. But what they need to realize is that this cost of constructing all these wind turbines are incurred now. As soon as we build them, as soon as we bring all the machines and the coders and all that to start establishing all these wind turbines, there's going to be a significant cost borne by the people of Nantucket Sound, including me, my family, and all my slaves and employees who are working on my fishery. This is going to be bad for me, it's going to be bad for everyone. Now, they have said that air quality is going to improve somewhat in the future, simply because maybe a few years down the road, 3 I think, a few years down the road when the wind turbines are fully constructed, we don't need to operate these generators as much. Now, I already mentioned that there's a limit to how much you can save on emissions, but even if we give it to them, that there's going to be significant reduction of emissions, then there's a need to balance the cost incurred by me and my people today and in the next 3 years or next 4 years relative to the benefits we accrue sometime in the future. And if you put it in economics terms, there's going to be a discount factor applied to all the benefits you have in future. But in layman terms, basically in fisherman terms, what this means is that the benefits I enjoy in future are not as impactful to my welfare as the costs which I incur today, simply because people are impatient and want to eat the candy now instead of eating it later, and that applies to benefits and applies to costs as well. So at the end of the day, it calls the question whether we are able to obtain a very comprehensive and accurate cost-benefit analysis but after we discount all the values. And it doesn't necessarily mean that at the end of the day we will have a positive net present value. It doesn't mean that at the end of the day it is actually economically efficient and viable to build these wind turbine generators. And basically, not just that, not just air quality, not just me suffering now and not suffering later or something. But I mean, some time back, before I left for work, I spoke to Aunt Miriam, who's like my neighbor and everything, and she said that it's going to affect our tourism. And I was wondering, how does it affect our tourism? And she said that, well, if the air quality were to drastically suffer for the next 3 years, people are not going to come for the next 3 years. And I'm thinking, but maybe when the air quality improves, maybe people will start coming back. But she said that reputation doesn't work that way. I'm not too sure how. If I'm not wrong, it's something like if people start to realize that the air quality has really drastically suffered, they're going to have a negative experience when they come here, and bad news travels quickly, and people are not going to want to come here anymore. So even if the quality of the air were to improve later on, that doesn't mean that the damage that is done by the construction today is going to be undone. Which is basically bad for not just our health, but bad for our economy, and bad for people who are bringing home the bacon, like me, with all my fisheries and stuff. Now, that said, maybe at the end of the day, the economic calculus might work out in the favor of this money-grabbing people, and basically it is actually so-called economically viable to build wind turbines. There's still a problem with this, even if you agree that there's going to be a positive net present value. Because I question whether these people have the moral authority to determine whether the suffering is justified. Now, what do I mean by this? The suffering now versus the benefits enjoyed later, correct? And then there's a discount value. But at the end of the day, even if the moral calculus is in their favor, the suffering that I have to go through now, how do you justify, how do you determine that it is justified for me to suffer now for the benefit of future generations? This generation might not, if this generation has opposed the plan to have Cape Wind come in and build all their wind turbines, how can they suddenly say that you are going to suffer now with the worsened air quality, but your next generation is going to benefit in future? And I'm not too sure if we as a people have really given them the mandate to determine that on their own unilaterally. But that aside, I mean, being a fisherman, I'm a very reasonable person, and I do think that we need to be very careful with our terms here. So, sometime back when I did economics, I learned this thing called Pareto efficiency. So basically, it's possible, or it's called the question whether it's possible for a policy to make a Pareto improvement, which means that to have a policy in which some people will benefit, in which people will benefit but not at the expense of other people. Now, what I'm arguing for is that in this case, there are people who are going to suffer. There will be people of this current generation. They suffer because of the construction of a wind turbine. People in the future are going to benefit, but because there is someone still has to suffer, and that's us. Therefore, we can make a Pareto improvement here. Perhaps if Cape Wind were to consider compensating the current generation, then maybe it might be worth it for us to suffer the cost of having worsened air quality. What I learned in quants is that this is actually called a Kaldor-Higgs improvement. Simply put, it's possible to make an improvement if you implement this policy and have a corresponding compensation, monetarily or otherwise, to people like us who slave in seas to get fish. Compensate us for the worsened air quality. If that works out, if they're willing to compensate us, then maybe it might be beneficial for us in the end. But otherwise, I'm not too sure about that. And you know, I've gone on for 10 minutes and as a fisherman, I've said my piece. Thank you very much. That's the end of what I need to say.
Thank you. So that concludes our discussion between the two parties, and thank you for a very civil and polite conversation, and I'm sure it was very enlightening for both parties on the different viewpoints. So now, Tani will summarize the different points that the proposition and the opposition have provided, and he will also give an overview of our group opinion with regards to our stand as outsiders on the Cape Wind controversy.
Thank you, Johnson. Okay, firstly, from the proposition side, Jing has mentioned the reduction of air pollutants that is emitted that can be brought forth by the wind turbines. She mentioned that the reduction in the greenhouse gases can be as large as more than 700,000 tons per year. Secondly, she also mentioned that energy produced by wind turbines is totally clean because it does not involve burning of coals that releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And therefore, wind turbines can be used to replace some of the conventional plants which uses coals and oils and natural gases that actually pollutes the air. So in this way, the wind turbines are actually improving the air quality. Okay, followed by, after that, the opposition, our eco tour guide, rebutted by stating that, in fact, during the construction phase of the wind turbines, pollution is already done. In this case, the pollution into the air actually can cause harm to the local residents in the construction phase itself. After that, Sun also pointed out that the main source of air pollution in the United States, it is not by energy generation, it is in fact by transport and the industries. Therefore, the construction of a wind turbine that actually improves air quality should not be the priority. It should be instead focus on the transport and industry sectors. Also, she brought up that a company known as TransCanada has already made a deal with the New England utilities to provide renewable energy at a much cheaper rate as compared to the Cape Wind project. Finally, CERN has also brought up some alternative renewable energy sources which can be considered, which may be considered to the wind turbine as a possible way of improving air quality. One such source is photovoltaic cells, which does not cause as much air pollution during the construction phase. Another one renewable energy source is the offshore tidal energy generation, which is more reliable in the sense that it is not an intermittent source such as the wind, and therefore it will be more reliable and provide a better generation option. Next, we will go on to what BK has mentioned as part of the proposition. Firstly, he mentioned that the air pollution produced in the construction phase may be negligible as compared to the total saving in terms of air pollution emission that the wind turbine can bring in the future. Also, BK mentioned that the solar PV cells also has its limitation in the sense that it requires a larger area of land to deploy, and also that the tidal source requires a building of a barrage which can cause damage to Nantucket Sound's shore environment. After that, we can also mention two other sources of renewable energy which do not produce air pollution. They are nuclear energy as well as hydropower. He mentioned the constraints of both sources of energy. In the nuclear, for the nuclear energy, there are actually very serious safety concerns which must be taken into consideration. For the hydropower, as we know, a dam needs to be built for hydropower, and these dams actually produces greenhouse gases on their own. Therefore, in conclusion, WICAD feels that wind power is the most clean and renewable energy source that should be used for the Cape Wind project. Finally, we have Nicholas, our fisherman friend from the opposition. He has brought up several very interesting points. Firstly, he mentioned that there is actually a limit to how much air quality improvement that can be done by the wind turbine, because no matter how much wind turbine we have, we still need to have some base generation plants, conventional generation plants, as we run at all times due to the intermittent nature of the wind. After that, Nicholas also mentioned some ethical issues that is involved when building the wind turbines. First of all, whether the building a wind turbine and the benefit it brings has a significant enough net present value to offset the damages that it has done during its construction phase, and also whether the investors have the moral authority to decide that the current generation of the Nantucket Sound residents have to suffer the construction in order to bring some benefits for the future generation. Okay, so that concludes our group's discussion. Representing our group as a group of students from the National University of Singapore instead of residents that's living in the Nantucket Sound, we believe that the Cape Wind project should be allowed to go through. This is because we feel that the amount of air pollution reduction that the wind turbine brings greatly outweighs the damage that is done during the construction phase, and also we believe that the moral problems can be solved in the near future, and also that some form of compensation can be in place that can be used to compensate the local residents for the damages that is done during the construction phase. Okay, so that will be our viewpoint. Thank you.